Good morning, Countrysiders. Good morning. We have a special guest with us today. I am delighted to introduce our newly inaugurated state representative, Nabila Syed, who represents the district in which Countryside is situated. Representative Syed has just wrapped up her first month in the 103rd General Assembly, working on preparing legislation that will help seniors live and thrive in District 51, make organ donation easier, and increase voting access. She is one of the youngest ever to serve in Springfield and among our first Muslims to serve there. She is excited to enter into any conversations regarding concerns and hopes you have for District 51. And today she will be answering students' questions about environmental justice and climate change with our 3rd to 5th and junior high classes. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our totally awesome new state representative, Nabila Syed.
It is a day that I am really glad I went to this undergrad college for part of my education that always said when you use technology, you have to have backup technology. So I'm walking around with an iPad, a phone, and a computer, and we're good. Well, we are delighted to have you with us today. I think that what I have read about you, Representative, will go very well with Emergent Strategies today. So maybe you'll be able to catch the sermon next time, or online. But we're delighted to have you here. Indeed, your leadership represents emergent leadership. So welcome. I am the Reverend Denise Colley, and my pronouns are she and hers, and it's a total honor to serve as your interim minister here at Countryside. I'm delighted to be leading this service on Emergent Strategies for Leadership. I've asked so many of you if you've heard of this, and no one has, so what fun that this will be new for many of you. I love talking about this. I've done probably 5 or 6 different sermons on it. It was very interesting to pick out what would be the first one I would introduce you with and how I would change it for you. And I'll tell you, at 11 p.m. last night, I hated it and I rewrote it all. Just for you. Do you already know that your existence, who and how you are, is in itself a contribution to people and place around you? Not after or because you do some particular thing. Now, I know for the generation that was raised that you must always be the best, this could be a mind-blowing concept for you. Not after or because you do some particular thing, but simply the miracle of your life. And that the people around you and the places have contributions as well. Do you understand that your quality of life and your survival are tied to how authentic and generous the connections are between you and the people and place you live with and in? You are actively practicing generosity and vulnerability in order to make connections between you and others clear, open, available, durable. Generosity here means giving of you what you have without strings or expectations attached. Think about that. Vulnerability means showing your own needs. Adrienne Marie Brown said that in her book, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing the World. So today I invite you to please find a place in our sanctuary if you haven't already. Does someone have a device up here? Very strange, it's buzzing. My apologies. Find a place where your body can be comfortable with lots of space. If you ever need to stretch or stand or sway, you are not required to stay in your seats. And both children and adults are welcome in any part of our service. A very special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. You are welcome in our coffee hour. You don't have to scurry off. And you're welcome in our special all-church session that we'll have after we all get our coffee and snacks, We're going to delve into the history of religious education here at Countryside. And newcomers are very helpful in these history sessions that we're doing. It's all part of our interim ministry work. It's a formative process. So if you are newcomers, please don't all group together. We want to spread you out throughout the different groups so that we can have a variety of longer-term members with you as well. Anyone here who has not signed the membership book, I encourage you to become a covenanted member here. We are ready to love you. Let me know if you need information about that. In our last interim transition history sessions, we did two. We did one online and one in person. There were a couple of comments about pronouns and why we use our pronouns here. And I want to be clear that it is not that people didn't want to use them, but that people were tired of hearing other people questioning using them, and they were hoping that they'd get some more education or information. And I just want to say, just as we don't know someone's name until they tell us, we also don't know everyone's pronouns. And if you think that that is a really obvious thing, it might not be for everyone. And when you say them, you alleviate that needing to be odd. So you do a service for others when you do that. So I encourage you to put your pronouns on your name tag, or if you're on Zoom, you can add them to your name there. And if you're unfamiliar with why that can be helpful for people, just let me know, or Maree would be glad to help too today as our worship associate. So welcome so much. I can't wait to hear what you think about this topic.
Sometimes paper is the best technology. Our child sliding today is Hymn to the Light by David Braden. I'm Maree Van Meter, and my pronouns are she, her. I am part of the Worship Council and Outreach Steering Committee, and I'm also the events coordinator, and just hopefully your guys' friend. Please, I invite the people at home to kindle your chalice as well, and please join me in reading these words. Our light is the light of the sun, keeper of all we love. Our light is the light of the earth, provider of sustenance. Our light is the light of all living things, life precious like our own. Our light is the light of each of us, bound together in need and hope. Our light is the light of the cosmos, keeper of all we know. Please join us in singing hymn 360, Here We Gather.
All who seek here find a kindly
stay risen and join me in reading our covenantal covenant. We unite to strengthen the bonds of kinship among all persons, to promote human dignity and increase reverence for life's creating, sustaining, and transforming power through worship, study, and service.
Good morning. I'm Helen Moore. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of the lay ministry and a number of other small groups. Not working? Okay. Our story today is One Dark Bird by Liz Garton Scanlon, illustrated by Fran Preston Gannon. And when I hold up fingers, I invite you to join me and count along. One dark bird perched way up high, a view of town, a taste of sky. Two birds more come winging by, then three, then four. Four flights multiply. Five more swoop around a cloud, warble, whistle, join the crowd. Six soar brightly. Seven sweep. Eight will sing the sun to sleep. Then 9, then 10, from who knows where, till starling sounds fill up the air. 100 here and there, find feathered friends with sky to spare. But suddenly they're all alert, danger's near, and flights divert. They wheel away from hunting hawk, single birds become a flock, waves like water, dark, then light, from up to down, then left to right. A rush, a murmur, cut turns in, a dot to dot, a corkscrew spin. Flapping fervor, noisy clutch, they dance together without touch. Hundreds here and then, good night. They fly away with evening's light, till just a few float loose and free. 10 birds settle in a tree. 9 land here, and 8 dive there. 7 swing in still sweet air. 6 sing softly, 5 just sigh. 4, then 3, then 2, goodbye. 1 last bird perched way up high, a view of town, a taste of sky. And now young people may follow Dr. Mary to their religious exploration sessions.
Say, our Unitarian Universalism is a life-saving faith. And people, even some here, sometimes laugh at me and tell me I'm way too dramatic. I can tell you, though, stories like the one you're about to hear illustrate for me why having this congregation thrive and our Unitarian Universalism not just survive but even grow is essential to the movement. That is why I am a minister. It is why I give to our congregations and to the UUA. Maree started visiting our congregation about 7 years ago and became a member 4 years ago. Maree, can you please come here and share your story?
Good morning again. I'm Maree Van Meter. I want to offer a content warning that my testimonial mentions abuse of children. And I also want to let you know that this is the first time I've actually ever told this story in whole, and it's probably the only time you're going to see me nervous speaking. My journey to find a spiritual home at Countryside began a long time ago. I was the youngest of 3 daughters of an upstanding white Christian middle-class family. My family led a church-centered life. My mom had a music ministry degree from Cincinnati Bible Seminary. She sang in a choir, played piano for church, and led congregational singing. My dad was the president of a church summer camp. My church felt like home. It felt like it was very safe for me. When I was 5 years old, I was taken from my front yard by a stranger. During my abduction, I was abused. I saved myself by jumping out of a moving vehicle. My captor was arrested, but he died in prison before the case came to trial. My family thought this was very positive because we could just go on and we didn't have to dwell on the tragedy. The following year, I was one of 2 first-grade children abused by a teacher in an ongoing method at my Christian school. I remember my family naming this the unspeakable event. I continued to attend the school through 8th grade, but I never really felt safe. Before the tragedy and the unspeakable event, I was a joyous child. After the tragedy and the unspeakable event, I was robbed of that feeling of security and joy. Back in 1969, counseling was not offered. We took a thank God and move on approach. But that approach doesn't really work no matter how hard you try. I developed issues. I'm not sure if it would have been the same if the tragedy and the unspeakable event hadn't happened, or if it had been addressed or given the opportunity to heal. My family was also judged because, after all, they were allowing the unruly child to act out. We were definitely under the spare the rod, spoil the child time period. I felt ashamed and less than worthy. No one bothered to ask what had happened to me or why I behaved as I did. It felt like no one really cared why, that I started using drugs or hanging out with really dangerous people at a really young age. Instead, our community was mortified at how much I was embarrassing my family. After those traumatic events, I began a spiritual journey that took me from charismatic Christian churches where people spoke in tongues, through several world religions, including Baha'i. I explored Scientology and other cults. I almost ended up Guyana. However, I never found a place that made me feel like they just wanted me exactly how I was at the moment in time. So I gave up my quest. When my middle school age pagan son was looking for community, he found CCUU, and I decided to drop him off. He became more involved, and I also became more involved. I attended a few Sunday services, and I always felt very welcomed. If I swore or said something that was controversial, no one gave me the feeling that I might burn in hell. It happens. When my pagan son became a teenager and realized that he was actually my neo-druid daughter, she turned to CCUU for support and was met with open arms and non-judgmental hearts. She was given all the help and support she could have asked for, and then some. Through her journey, I realized that I had found the place I was looking for. People here like me, despite of what some people would call my brokenness, and others know as a path that makes me more loving and, frankly, more interesting. Here at Countryside, people enjoyed joining me in celebrating my survival. No one here has ever given me the feeling that if they knew my story, that they would judge me because of it, and that's why I'm sharing it with you today. This spiritual home doesn't want us to remain the same, but to grow and to know we are loved and accepted on the journey. Here our dreams of a future of equality for all are shared. Here our desire to create a safe, loving, and accepting space for our children to come as our authentic selves is met with love and realized. My family pledges financial support to Countryside because we understand the importance of having a safe place and the healing power of that place. We give because our congregation creates change. We give to Countryside because of its outstanding work with children. What if my childhood congregation had a safe place for children? Open conversations about hard topics and other things that people would consider unspeakable. What if they'd had covenants to help get through those difficult conversations? What if I'd felt safe in my childhood? Imagine how different things would have been for my daughter, Izzy, if she hadn't had that safe place to ask questions and then come out as trans. Without our financial support, Countryside cannot continue all the wonderful work it does for our community and our world but more importantly, our children. It's more important than ever that our young people understand that they are perfect exactly how they are. You are my family. This is my home. When you make your pledge, consider bringing it up 10 or 20% or maybe even into that next level. Do it for all the survivors who didn't let harm, even in church communities, break us. Do it for the spirited seekers among us like me, and do it for the kids. And know that I love you all. Thank you.
Emergent Strategies is a term coined by Adrienne Maree Brown with a book of the same title, Emergent Strategies. Adrienne Maree Brown is an author, activist, social justice facilitator, healer, and so much more. She has been a part of many of the most significant social movements in recent years, including Black Lives Matter and Occupy Wall Street. These movements teach us that organizing can be done in different ways than we are used to thinking of leadership. Come with me on a journey today as we explore emergent strategies and how we can look at nature to guide us in our leadership work that we have to do together. In Brown's Emergent Strategies, we look to how we can be fractal in our organizing, fractal in our leadership, because we are all pieces of the larger whole that we dream of. Our churches are fractals, our homes are fractals. And a fractal is an object or quantity that displays itself similarly like these pine needles. It looks roughly the same at any scale. Small scale solutions impact the whole system. How can we ever dream a world of peace and tranquility if we don't have it on the smallest fractal? We have to start small with ourselves. We are building in scales. Murmuration. Starlings' murmuration consists of a flock moving in sync with one another. They engage in clear, precise movements, never hitting one another, never colliding, but instead they have this deep trust of one another. That trust is profound, and how do they know where they're going? They look to those closest around them. Join with us in a movement of synchronicity. Movements learn to go along at the speed of trust. Brown explains that her dream is a movement where there's such deep trust that we move as a murmuration, the way groups of starlings billow, dive, and spin, the same way that fish move. They are shoaling. Bees or other insects move this way, and they are swarming. Can we move at the speed of trust? Water is versatile. Water can be big and powerful. It can quench thirst. It can be healing. It always finds balance. We too are seeking emergent leadership in our Unitarian Universalist movement. In Brown's work, we learn that leadership collaborates. It's fecund. It moves in a juicy way that it starts at these little fractals and it grows up, and there's so much deep coordination. They are like hummingbirds and flowers. They come together because they need each other for survival. And we can be this vibrant and successful if we too move along in such coordinated collaboration. In today's sermon, you will get a taste of emergent strategy, and hopefully this will be a theme in our year as we go through learning together that small is good and small is all. We don't have to be big elephants. We can be tiny starlings. Change is always constant. Be like the water that we've heard about this year. Know that there is always enough time for the right work. And the conversation that's in the room when you meet with people, that's the only one that's possible at that particular moment. Find what is the good of you all working together. Remember, there's never a failure. Life is always a lesson.
Brown asks us to remember that we have to trust people, and people we trust become trustworthy. And that's how we move at the speed of trust. We are focusing on critical connections. That's why we have coffee hours. That's why we have teas. That's why we have committees. We are working together to build resilience, to get good at change, to be more active in our doing and less worried about perfection. Remember to pay attention to what you care about. That is what will grow.
Beautiful, right? Nature is wonderful. Most of us love it. But what does that actually have to do with you? How do you actually become that? As an individual, you are one fractal of our entire society. As a congregant, you are one member of this larger congregation. That congregation is one member of the larger Unitarian Universalist Association. We're talking lots lately about money, and indeed we are asking people to think about how they steward our congregation into a healthier whole. And likewise, our society can't ever be whole and healthy if one part of it is not well. Fractals are like building blocks for larger movements. Emergent movements are how we create cultural change. Cultural change is fueled by a combination of spiritual practice, prayer, meditation, nature, God, whatever you want to say, as well as education. And those together build micro movements. The bees, the birds, they're all showing us a micro movement. But that jump from, yes, nature, it's pretty, but what if what I care about is gender rights or the environment or what we have to do to take care of Chalice House? What about that, Reverend Denise? Come on. And you know what? My foot hurts. And look, my kids need help, all right? It is all so much. And you're right. You are totally 100% right. So how do we do it? How do we go from all those pretty things you just showed us, Reverend Denise, and all those things we care about, and the burdens that we're carrying, because we are. And then look at that one drop of water and get the idea that we could act as a wave and move together. We could move the earth. That's what waves do, right? Today we are naming micro movements as fractals. And those fractals build into murmurations. So I'm going to give you a little formula today. I know some of you love formulas, right? Lisa's like, yes, I do. This works for your personal life, your professional life, your congregational life, your family life, whatever you're involved in. I'm going to give you the answer today, all right? You won't like it. Maybe you will. I don't know. Let me know. I'd love to hear about that in the receiving line after. I'm going to give you the secret to deepen your spirit and make you far more impactful. Impactful in your justice work or your creativity or your family. We want to be impactful, right? Because it's really easy to get caught up in the busy. Ready? Step 1. Spiritual practice is a fractal. It's a block that you need to build up yourself and to be in relationship with others. Each block you build is a fractal. And we need fractals to create cultural change. Fractals are the relationship between the small to the large, and how we build a new world, a new congregation. Not that there's anything wrong with this one, but we're going to make it even better, right? How do we build 27 chalice houses, right? How do we build the best, most anti-racist, most anti-oppression, most, generous movements for all the issues that we care about. A better relationship with your spouse and even your children. Whoa, 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 Reverend Denise, I am back on the worries about my kid and my health. And you might say, I know. See, the thing of it is, this is the crazy thing, okay? This is the bananas part. We need healthy people who are calm and meditated or prayed up, who are writing poetry and making art. We need you to do that work. It's not selfish, it's actually helpful to the movements that we care about. Because people who are calm, and they've slept well, and they've ate right, and they've, had some exercise, they are in a state of mind that is ready for new ideas. They can surf, right? They can surf with these new ideas. Oh, that change is coming? That's okay, we can handle it, because I've done my meditation, I've done my poetry. They can think of how to solve larger issues. So the first fractal is you. You taking care of you. And if you can't do it for you, do it for all those other things you're worried about. Because you will actually help all those things if you take care of you. Spiritual practices are practices. Some of you have them. Some of us aren't that great at them. Some of us were great at one time and we got to get back to it, right? Sometimes my spiritual practices go out the window. I love to get busy working, and poof, I put myself last. That is the wrong thing to do. See, when we are learning from emergent strategies, is that self-care is not something selfish. It is the way we take care of our communities. You need spiritual practice to ready yourself and go out into the world and be impactful. If you think, I don't know what to do about this, or maybe this will fail, the best thing to do is your spiritual practice before you try to solve the rest, before you write the email. Go meditate. Go do whatever your thing is. I don't care if you do it for 30 seconds. It will make it better. You will have a clearer mind. You will have a better answer. I sometimes hear people say, I want the congregation to be even more spiritual. You use love to say that. Don't think you're alone and it's just here. Everywhere I go, what we really need is more spirituality. And what I say is, what does that mean to you? And I really mean it. What does it look like to you? And I urge you to make a note of that right now on your phone or your order of worship. What does that mean? How do you know when you have it? How do you know when you've experienced it? What does spirituality mean to you? I'm going to be quiet for a moment. Think about it. Some people think that spiritual comes from doing justice work. You love how much we are active in the world here at Countryside and how much justice work we do. But do you understand that the justice work will never fulfill you, and you won't do it well if you are not accompanying it with spiritual practice? Now maybe you picked up that book I told you about last fall, where you learned about how Unitarians think that the justice will bring them the spirituality, and it doesn't really work that way. It's called Widening the Circle. It's that blue book. You can read it for free. It's online. You don't want to read? It'll read it to you. Widening the Circle, UUA, Google it. Listen, read, download for free. I like paper books, Reverend. They have paper copies. We have some in the library. There's probably a copy on my shelf, borrow it, right? So I introduced you to that in the fall. If you want, we can have a book discussion about it. I'd love to. I can talk about that book all the time. I've read that book 3 times. I'm still learning from it, right? It really helps you understand where UU theology is at these days. And it talks about how doing spiritual practice is absolutely essential. It's not just attending the trainings. It's not just writing your representatives. It's not just going to a protest. You have to have spiritual practice. We have to start with that fractal. Pathetically. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google Reverend Denise Colley, Pathetic Spiritual Practice. You'll find the sermon, right? Someday I'll write a book. Without spiritual practice, we become tired. We become full of worry. We are not in our best place for caring and giving back, and our families see it, and our communities feel it, and our jobs feel it. If we are running around giving, there is nothing that you are giving that is really serving anyone well. Because our faith is one of a living tradition, that means we have to always be learning and caring and growing to live our tradition. We're making it up all the time. So widening the circle points out how spiritual practice is essential to being a UU. That might be writing, that might be drawing. There's a million ways that you could do that. If you want to ask for ideas, talk to me. I love talking about that. It's easy to feel like you are doing everything right because your schedule is full. You might volunteer here and at church and work really hard at all the things you do to help the planet or help our kids. You might be excellent at all those things and feeling like you're excelling. And you might feel pretty good, or you might still wonder if it makes any difference at all. Am I really doing it? Is it really good enough? See, people who show up without being in a system that's all pulling toward the same goal is like being that one leaf after you rake everything and it just floats off on its own, right? Just goes up in the air alone. What we are looking to be instead is a spiritually healthy person who can withstand change and stress and can see that they are an individual that's part of a larger movement. That's how we change the world. Repeating those units and building a practice that fulfills you makes you ready to move culture. Maybe now's the day you start a prayer practice. Doing something once a week isn't a practice, but more of a hobby. Once a month is not enough to have building blocks of tessellations. Just isn't. It's better to do short intervals frequently. Short intervals frequently, right? 30 seconds 3 times a day is better than once a week for an hour. Because then you're doing it. When you're doing it, suddenly you have a practice. Then you could grow it. Or then you might find yourself staying longer with it. It's not the time, it's the intervals. It's the repetition of the tessellation. Okay, next step in the formula. Jot this down, Lisa. Group spiritual practice. If you are searching for a deeper life and more spirituality within this congregation or your life or your family, I wonder if now is a good time to join a soul circle or start a new one. Talk to Lisa, Gilly, raise your hand. Lisa, is Rick here? I don't see Rick. Rick Rayborn could help you too, right? There you go, yes. Thank you, Hayden. So, Hayden, how do I say it? I did, okay, good. Yes, so great. 2 people you can find about our soul circles, these small group ministries. This is where you learn to practice what it is being a you, right? People can check on you. Hey, did you meditate this week, Allison? Did you do your thing? Did you walk in the woods? You know, and then you go, I didn't. Okay, I'm going to do better next time because they're going to ask me. Right? Now is a great time to sign up for Beloved Conversations, that amazing anti-racism group practice spiritual journey. There's lots of art and music in it. It's fun. Soon you'll have the chance to sign up for Living the Pledge. These are all important parts of dismantling oppression, but they're about equipping you with the spiritual practice, you with the tools so that you can go out and do the work. And I say this because in Emergent Strategies, we do things in small units that build up to the larger whole. Adrienne Marie Brown says, how we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale. If you were here last week, I told you the story about how when Obama was, a community organizer, he thought that if he ran for the next level of leadership, then the yahoos wouldn't be there. And then he ran, and there were the yahoos, right? And then he went and he became a representative, right? And a state senator, all the things, right? And the people who were bananas were still there, even all the way up to the G8, right? Because how you are at the small scale is how you are at the large scale. Whenever I'm accompanying someone through the process of someone dying, it always comes up that people will say, I just wish they had their affairs in order. I wish they would have gone to the doctor sooner. I wish they would sit down and write down all the things we need to know. I wish they would tell me they loved me. How we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale. How people live is how they die. So if you want to change your trajectory, you have to live differently. The patterns of the universe repeat that scale, and there is a structural echo that suggests that 2 things. One, that shapes and patterns are fundamental to the universe. So I'm talking to you about making a pattern in your spiritual practice, right? You need a pattern. And 2, what we practice small scale can reverberate to the largest scale. So first you need spiritual practice, and second, you need a way that you do it in community. Your pathetic spiritual practice can scale up. Maybe that means you join the Buddhist group. Maybe that means that you're gonna walk together with people. Maybe you're gonna, find a group that wants to meditate, or you're gonna have a check-in call for 15 minutes with several of your family members once a week to check in on how you're all doing. And maybe you start it with a chalice lighting and, you go around, you share something, and you're done. Morning, noon, bedtime, or 5 minutes at a time. The way you practice spirituality in your congregation matters too. We need individual and group spiritual practices, and those groups help us practice. They are part of echoing the waves. They are also how we build ourselves up and change our communities. I love to think of congregation life as the testing ground. This is where we practice these things. We try on language we're not familiar with. We try a different way of solving things. We can practice here because we are here to love you through your change. So all the different things we do, some people have book groups and some have spirituality discussions, all those things are ways that you can start to tessellate. Remember the Thich Nhat Hanh quote, a lone practitioner is an ex-practitioner. We need our community to practice our spirituality. Next, we do trainings, we read, we take classes, and those are additional building blocks. We do them for skill learning and anti-oppression learning, but those are all things we need to do to learn to practice while talking with one another, and we're never done. I heard some people say, I took that class 5 years ago. Some of these we have to do year after year. We have to keep having conversations about anti-oppression. The language changes, right? The tools for covenant change. We're getting updates. It would be like using a computer from 1987, right? Is it still really working? Yes, it worked great then, but it needs an update, right? We have to update our technology. So we have to update our spiritual practices. We have to update our knowledge and our inspiration. That's why we keep coming to church. Now in the video you saw things about murmurations, and those are key to changing culture. Really different than the idea of a patriarchal society where there's one leader and we all follow the different levels of leadership. Here we're saying the people right around you can be the leader. That you are part of being somebody else's leader. So these are small units that all communicate with just a few around them. Those small groups tell the next group, and that's how the word spreads. Tony Kade Bambara has taught us we must make just and liberated futures irresistible. See, movements can't be all business. They have to be fun and food and art. She says we are the protagonists of what might be called the great turning, the change, the new economy, the new world. I once practiced this kind of emergent strategy for cultural change when I was at Bradford UU in Kenosha. They wanted me to come and build a transgender ministry, and they asked me to lead it. Now, I gotta tell you, at the time, I thought, oh, I really think you need a spiritual practice, kind of movement, right? Like, I didn't think their idea was the right idea. I really didn't. I was wrong. Because that was in their strategic plan. They wanted to do that. But what they thought they would do is they thought they would hang a sign out, and then people would come and they would have a transgender ministry outreach program, right? That's not how it worked. Instead, we set up using the Transforming Hearts curriculum, another amazing curriculum we could do here as an adult ed program. It was developed by UU religious educators, great program. And what's so great about it is that it looks at gender and sexuality through an intersectional lens, but it also looks at all forms of oppression and racism and environmental catastrophe, to issues of income disparity, all kinds of things about how democracy works. It looks at all of that as a system, right? It's an emergent kind of class that you take. And you do part of it online and part of it in group discussions. So they learned that just talking about anti-oppression wouldn't make sense to focus on alone. We had to look at it through art and culture and environment and economics to see the interconnection of it all. Learning about oppression linked to issues we already care about is a way of changing culture. And indeed, those are ways we tessellate and build upon our learning. We build upon what we already care about. At Bradford, not only did we include that curriculum and all the ways we lifted up anti-oppression, but we designed it with tessellations, parts that built upon one another, hoping to create cultural change. We really wanted to actually make it stick and not just be like that time we did that thing, right? We brought in speakers, we designated split the plate offerings, we had hands-on classes and discussions, we did all ages RE, we read books, we listened to podcasts and movies. We devoted sermon and worship and all ages religious education opportunities every other month on the topic. Myself, along with the teams and staff supporting the effort, saturated the community there. And that let them make the learning each their own. Everybody did different parts. Each person was a starling. I hoped that enough people would focus on their building blocks to begin to move as a murmuration. But don't get me wrong, I had no idea if this would work. I really hoped it would, but I wasn't sure. I sometimes thought we were booking along and then someone would say or do something that kind of broke my heart. And I would need to wonder and ask questions and clarify where they were coming from. It's much like how we're going through our interim transitions process here and all the activities. We're doing all these smaller activities and sessions, many parts that we hope will lead the congregation to being very nimble, right? And able to move and change as a unified murmuration. Somewhere around halfway through that plan in Kenosha, I found myself wondering if it was going to work at all. I was getting really hopeless. Was anything actually going to take flight? But at that point, I knew I had to keep just planting the seeds, keep going through the process. The process will lead us there, right? Build up the tessellations. Stop and do spiritual practice about it. Do the formative work. Show up. Reach out. Make calls. If someone hurts you, talk to them as soon as possible. Try it all again. There's one cold day in January in Kenosha. The wind is fierce in Kenosha. I got out of my car on the way to service. It was like 30 below zero, and I got out by the lake. And the sun was beaming, and there was this beautiful tree. And that was my spiritual practice that day. I was like, hey, tree, love ya, great, frozen lake, okay. Breathe, okay, run back in the car. And we had this all ages RE session after service that day. And the groups broke off in their small group exercises. And instead of stopping with the suggested questions, they kept going. The room was buzzing. One fraction was going to go and address the website and communication tools, and another decided to go work on the school district, and someone else gathered a group. They were going to go to the Aging Commission in Kenosha. And the worship team figured out how to incorporate radical welcome and hospitality into all the services going forward. Yeah. And suddenly the majority of the congregation was making plans for work on these justice and welcome issues from both inside and outside the church. And I stood back. I watched them buzz. They were vibrating. The tessellations were turning into murmurations, and suddenly they were all going in the same direction. The congregation was taking on a life because they owned it. It had become their journey. With the birds, we see them all telling one another, dive left, flutter right? With each little grouping sharing similar messages, the birds began to form a unit, all moving together. So the next step in your life, the next step in this church, in your family, at your work, is figuring out how to mimic these flying, buzzing creatures. And it starts with those building blocks of tessellations. Our interim transitions team is setting up tessellating opportunities for you to practice this work. So I hope you come to the sessions with an open heart. If you can, bring your best self, pray up, meditate before. We have one today. Right? We want to see what it's like. And I have to tell you, that one in January, y'all were buzzing. People were talking and talking and talking. And I use our congregation as part of my getting certified as an interim minister. You're my laboratory. And what they told us this week is that they have watched congregations time and time again that grow and become successful. And do you know what the one most common thing they have found is that they all do? They have opportunities to regularly talk to one another, working on different subjects, just like how we're doing these interim meetings. Because people have to talk to each other and hear what one another says to help the group share and start to go into a direction together. Congregations where it's one minister controlling all of the messaging and people never get together and talk to each other, they don't have that power of the group. Right? Or if we only kind of go off organically, but none of it is kind of saying, well, what are we working towards? Let's have a process. They don't grow the same way. They said these conversations are integral, not just to an interim time. So I hope that at the end of our time together, we will be moving in a murmuration. I don't know what it's going to look like here. That's why we're in a formative process. You are figuring out who you are and how to talk to each other again. I've noticed that sometimes things go longer than we planned, and I think it's because everyone misses talking to one another. Right? I think people start and they go and they go and they go. Y'all, you're lonely. We all are lonely. Don't want to admit it because we're busy. Churches and synagogues and community centers are where we can love one another up or be supportive while practicing these concepts and trying them out. At Countryside, we're here making this laboratory for you to try on meditation or prayer or group talk or having thoughtful moments together. People who are full of worries can't heal our world. People who feel shame or like they're unworthy cannot go and join others and make the movement healthy. We need you to do your personal work together. We need you to do that and not just survive, but heal together. And using emergent strategies at CCUU, we can turn our congregation into that laboratory for healing and justice and really changing the world. See each building block of the congregation, from the emotional support to the pastoral care to the lay ministry and the caring ministry and the religious education and the faith formation and the inspiration and the love and the worship. Those are all building blocks, making this tessellation all come together. Just like how you saw those Queen Anne's lace pictures of those flowers with all those little mini flowers, right, that become the larger flower. We're trying to help you go from one drop of water to the mighty sea together. Something you might not know about me is I really love the film Nanny McPhee. There's 2 parts. Has anyone seen it? It's a kid's movie. It has fabulous color. I love color. It's very well done. So Nanny McPhee comes, typical nanny kind of story, right? And she tells the children that she comes to nanny for, who are very unhappy she's there. They don't want her. She says, there's something you should understand about the way I work. When you need me, but you do not want me, then I must stay. When you want me but no longer need me, then I have to go. It's really sad, but there it is. Why is intra-ministry so long? I am just one drop, just like you. I am one starling. I am one dandelion seed. As an interim minister, my stay comes when you need me, but may not want me. Why do they stay so long? And like Nanny McPhee, however, I'm just a part of the system. I come to listen, to reflect back what you tell me. I ask lots of questions. I offer ideas, and in that process, you change me too. We stay a few years and poof, like a dandelion, interim ministers disappear into the wind. But in that wind are the seeds that you shared with me, and in your wind are the seeds I shared with you. Those seeds will travel on my stole. My ideas about our faith will plant here, and your ideas can root here and elsewhere as we all work together to spread Unitarian Universalism. May we create murmurations.
Each week, we take up an offering over and above member pledges. Your contribution supports the mission of Countryside, our presence in the community, the staff we hire to support that mission, and the building that houses our work. Your gift helps to maintain our church as the strong beacon of UU values in the northwest suburbs. Instructions to give electronically are printed in your order of worship and displayed on the video screen. The morning offering will now be received.
And thank you so much for your gifts of the offering. And our closing hymn is to remind you that we are in the stewardship drive. So rise as you are able or willing and sing along.
We've got to have a balanced
Allison tells me she has dozens of those. I guess we'll stop singing them when we hit the goal. We are socialized to see what is wrong or missing or off or tear down the ideas of others and lift up our own. To a certain degree, our entire future may depend instead on learning to listen without assumptions or defenses, says Adrienne Brown. So today after service, we take another aim at being tessellations. Last week I was told that those post-service conversations are one of those most important things, so you get to practice it today. They're one of the best things we can do for the congregation, and they're also a cure and an inoculation against loneliness. So join a tessellation after you get your coffee and snacks, and let's see if we can get the room to buzz together.
Our radical imagination is a tool for decolonization, for reclaiming our right to shape our lived reality. This is from Adrienne Marie Brown.
She also says, liberated relationships are one of the ways we actually create abundant justice. The understanding that there is enough attention, care, resources, and understanding for us all to be able to access connection, belonging, to be our dignity, and to be safe in community. Go in peace and create emergent relationships.